Hey folks, and welcome back. This is episode 11, and this is part 2 of the interview with Jeff Allen from Panavision.
Yeah, I mean, we've spoken about lenses and we've spoken about the cameras. And if I've just switched a little bit to lighting, actually, of course, Jake, obviously you use strobes a lot.
Yeah, exclusively.
So for the work you do. But one of the key differences up until the last few years between stills and motion picture is, of course, we've always used continuous lights. We don't get strobes.
Yes.
But increasingly with LED, we see a lot of the stills market now gradually moving to LED lights as well, so continuous lights. Of course, everybody thinks you just light the same way regardless, and it's not the case, basically. It's a very different way of lighting.
Yeah.
And you've got to shoot it differently
and you've got to shoot it differently as well. So it is, for many people, if they're switching from strobes to continuous light, it's a new learning circle.
Oh, completely different.
Really,
I mean, it's a whole article and podcast in its own right. But it's a different world, and there's where I would say that where sensor technology has been driven by the stills market and by things like surveillance as well. That's been another driver of CMOS sensors, for instance. Okay.
In lighting, I think it's been more driven by high-end television. I mean, Wayne, you've been an ambassador sometimes for ARRI for the sky panels.
Yes.
Phenomenal pieces of kit, those things.
You look
for
at
it.
the technology and the money they spent in creating that product.
Yeah.
And, it's easy to see the difference between, let's say a light panel or a light mat. Totally different products.
Like the ones we're lighting this set with today. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, wrecked.
But, you understand what I mean.
The car wasn't big enough to bring the light panels. They have some downsides. They are beautiful pieces.
Yeah, and obviously they'll do a lot more. They're RGB, for instance. So
and everything else.
Yeah, so you can do so much more with them.
Yeah,
and they're built robustly. They're built to withstand being hauled up. 10 meters above the ground, etc.
That's funny because about robust build. I was speaking to one of the MDs of ARRI, and I was saying, "Are you guys ever going to build like a lighter version for the photographic market?" No, in Germany, we like to bend metal. That's the answer that I got. That was awesome.
I'm glad we got the racial slur out of the way.
So they're always going to be built like tanks.
It's true, but I'm sure that's similar to what Panavision is.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, we have to.
They have to be built.
Yeah, you kind of have to build in what I would call redundancy into the product. You have to. We've seen so much equipment come back over the years that you thought, my God, how did they do that?
Yeah.
You've got lenses on the table here from the 1960s. I find it difficult to believe that in another 70 years we'll have some of our modern day lenses on somebody else's table in 70 years. That's all I'm saying.
Maybe our camera lenses are going to be plant pots.
Maybe all those images will be done by AI in the future.
Well, God, don't.
Yeah.
CG.
I'm retraining my career already.
I jest when I say that because I don't think that man will ever want to not be creative, not do something for himself. I think photography will be different in 70 years' time.
Sure.
Cinematography will be different in 70 years' time, but I think it will still be there.
Yeah, you'll just blink in 70 years' time. You'd have taken about 20 frames.
So, I mean, on that subject then, where do you see Panavision going in the future then? Like we're talking about, I mean, surely we can't just keep going 4K, 8K, 60. I mean, surely we can't just keep going. There's no point in that.
Because we're not even getting we're not getting that at the broadcast end, are we yet?
So to make a point that you said a second ago about lighting, I think that if we could probably do a complete podcast just on, why there's limited benefit from going from 4K to 8K. Particularly in the home.
Yeah.
But the fact but it's equally the same in a cinema. Basically,
Okay.
there is limited benefit of doing that. Of course, salesmen will try to tell you differently.
Always.
And, I can see the point of an 8K camera because we would oversample the image down to 4K
Yeah.
and retain all the benefits.
The information.
Information.
Okay.
But actually moving to an 8K or even beyond, because let's face it, once they get to 8K, they want to go to 16K.
Yeah.
There becomes a limiting factor in all of that.
Yeah. My eyesight. It's all very well.
The fact of the matter is, if you look at, I think from memory, I'm trying to remember this from memory. I think the average diagonal of a multiplex screen is 56 feet.
Okay. Okay.
And for 2K, the average multiplex, you would, best viewing distance is probably halfway into the auditorium.
Okay.
For 4K, it's in the front 3 rows. So for 8K, we're going to end up being in the no man's land between the screen and the front row.
Because it's
seats.
that much detail. Right.
You're sitting on the floor with your legs crossed.
So if you're going to be sitting in the middle, you're not seeing
It's wasted on me.
8K.
Yeah.
Wasted.
Most of it is wasted on me.
It's wasted. So, the same with your television. You need to increasingly get closer to the television or buy a bigger television.
Yeah, that's so true.
Now, we're in British homes have not got any bigger unless you can tell me something different.
No,
and even in American homes, which are generally bigger than
Sure,
our homes.
of course, yeah.
Once you get up to a 60-inch television set, you're starting to stretch the area in the room and put a screen in for most Americans.
Gotcha.
Well, good luck with broadcast companies even giving us that resolution anyway.
I think that there are other benefits, of course, to higher resolution.
This comes back to the HDR thing you were referring
exactly.
to. Yeah.
But I don't think the resolution in and of itself is the only reason, or indeed, is there necessarily benefits? And this is a conversation I've had with Franz Krauss, for instance, at ARRI. I think we share a similar opinion on this, that we are, in terms of viewing distance and resolution, actually 4K is quite a good optimum position to be in.
Okay.
And then you start to get diminishing returns thereafter.
Yeah, because our human eyes are still, they're not going to be upgraded anytime soon.
No.
But that said, so you said, what about innovation? There are still areas where we can innovate. Certainly the whole process of making a movie, and particularly if you look at the volume of production currently.
So are you seeing more TV shows than movies?
There's much more television production now than there were before. People are consuming content faster.
And streaming services.
Because of the streaming services.
Yeah.
And there was a report done, I can't remember exactly who did it. I think it was Ofcom, but I could be wrong. But it was a report done that most people will see a show up to 3 times and then basically only ever watch it again if it's really their most favourite show of all time,
kind of thing.
Or because there's absolutely nothing else to watch.
Which is never going to happen.
So, and most people, once they've watched the show, they don't really want to watch it again.
It's difficult, I know, yeah.
So
but I used to watch movies all the time.
So if we're consuming content faster, that means that it's going to have to be produced in a bigger volume. And
now, you mentioned how many shows that certain companies were pumping out. Are you able to share that figure?
Well, say a number of shows. I think the number of shows is maybe not the right way to look at it.
Okay.
I think the right way to look at it is the money being spent, and the money being spent is doubled in high-end television in the last few years.
Last few years,
yes, and is still growing because you've got new entrants into that market. Everybody's heard of Netflix. Everybody knows about Amazon. Everybody knows about HBO.
Yeah.
Of course, Disney
now,
who have been in the television market as well as motion picture a long time, are also bringing out services
that are going to compete against Netflix and Amazon, etc.
And talks
and now exactly BBC in the UK with ITV are talking about BritBox.
Yeah.
And of course, what the elephant in the room that announced that their Hollywood ambitions was Apple a couple of weeks ago.
Yes.
Okay.
And we don't know what their long-term goal is there. Only they know that.
Throw lots of money at it. I think so.
Exactly.
Come out, yeah.
But the good thing is this is upside for consumers.
Yes,
for sure.
Consumers have a lot more choice than they had before. But as I said, they're consuming much faster. So,
and did you say that Netflix are putting out like 8 shows a week or something? They're trying to film.
I don't know the exact number Netflix are putting out, but they certainly have ambitions to
globally, of course,
seriously increase their production.
Okay,
and that's how our consumption has changed, hasn't it? Where we'd sit down and watch films and films. Now there's a lot more series type programs and episodic programs coming in. Box sets coming out.
Attention span as well. It's difficult to. I mean, like I saw the Star Wars film and it's like 2.5 hours long. Oh, I don't know if I could. I don't know if I could sit down for 2.5 hours.
And of course, a lot of the big actors are now appearing in all these box sets. Whereas they'd only be in feature films.
That's
and
true.
They're all
that's
jumping
true.
in now, and of course the budget's there, the money's there to pay these fees and get these guys in there.
It's interesting to hear you say, doubled the amount of money being spent in that, TV market.
The industry as a whole,
years,
obviously not just one.
Of course, yeah. But that's huge growth. Yeah.
I mean, I've seen some of Netflix, figures online of how much they've invested, and how much they're investing into production, and it's. I mean, we're talking in the billions. That's a massive figure.
Well, it's because globally, they're just a powerhouse. Yeah.
Massive powerhouse.
I mean, all the numbers these companies are spending are a matter of public record.
Yeah,
they're not trade secrets.
Just do Google like I did.
Exactly. And I think that's good for the industry. It's good for the consumer. I can't think of any downsides to that. Basically, we've got much more choice as consumers. We choose what we want to watch, when we want to watch it, which is great.
Yeah.
Some of the genres now on Netflix are so granular.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
I look at some like, what?
Yeah, they're just like, old Northern English family drama based in the 1960s. It's like, what, really? Like, that's a genre? Like, it's so specific now. Because as you say, there's so much choice in terms of volume,
And then obviously on the production side of that, because there's so many box sets and so many films now, and that's all multiplying in production value. We now need more crews and more DPs, DOPs, more gaffers, grip. We need more actors, actresses. I mean, so there's more people now coming into the moving image world, which we've had conversations before where, not over 85% of the whole internet is moving image, which is dictating the way our world is going.
And also the other seismic shift that's happened. I mean, it's very public, the shift in terms of the newer broadcasters in terms of the OTT companies. It's well documented in the press. Indeed, their own press releases document that. But what's not necessarily apparent to many people is the increase in online advertising, which is more and more becoming video and not static.
Tell me about it. I find it so annoying online.
So
oh right, yeah.
So that's equally grown exponentially over the last few years. So
I think what Jeff's trying to tell me is that my job is now obsolete. You got any jobs going, Jeff? You need spaces.
Two places, please.
I actually don't think that's the case. I mean, of course, we see many stills photographers, particularly the ones dealing in an area of Wayne like you did in the fashion industry, where, they're increasingly asked to shoot video as well as stills at the same time, basically. I mean, you look at ASOS, for instance, you can go on their website, you've got static images of, the model wearing the attire that they've put them in. but you click on some of those images and you get the model walk to camera, walk away again, so you can see how the garments move.
Wayne's got a lot of nightmare stories of what.
Because I used to do a lot of that for Next. When I used to do stuff for them, and
you implemented it all originally at the time, which was just huge process.
Bringing in video to photographic departments. But like you say, it was going forward to a state where people wanted to see a pleated skirt, but they wanted to see how it moved and how it flowed. And I mean, originally I used to use green screen treadmills and things, but then we just brought it in studio and walk-ons and walk-offs and things like that. But it all has to be filmed and put online for people to see how it looks and moves.
But to go back to your point about, people coming into the industry, because of the growth of the industry.
Yeah.
We are Panavision are members of the British Screen Advisory Council. So it kind of liaises with the Treasury, the DCMS, various government bodies and ministers about the needs and wants of our sector, the creative sector. And it covers a broad church because it also covers computer games. But the only part of the creative industry we don't really cover is fashion.
Okay.
But it does include, many of the broadcasters. It doesn't include Netflix or I believe Amazon, but it does include some of the others.
Okay.
One of the things that we regularly talk about is the need for skills training. And there is an organization called Creative Skill Set, which is a government quango.
Okay.
Their job is to help establish training schemes at different levels and different grades. So anything from, a camera assistant all the way up to an assistant director, and ways and channels to get them into the industry. But I believe it's also, and one of the reasons why we're members, and indeed many of the large US studios are members, we believe that it's partly on us to make sure that there is a training regime in place that does bring people that are qualified into the industry so that the standards remain high, and that Britain, which has been renowned for its production expertise, stays there, basically.
I wasn't aware of this. What's it called again, sorry?
So it's an organisation called Creative Skill Set.
Okay.
Or Creative Skills, I believe it's called now. They liaise with the industry, and bring new entrants into the industry. I mean, that's not the only channel.
Okay.
There's lots of other ways.
And that's UK specific though, is it?
That's UK specific. Yeah. Yes,
okay.
That's run by the government. There are some, charity type organizations like, Mama Youth Project, for instance.
Okay.
That helps disadvantaged people get into the industry.
Okay.
And runs courses. Actually, and it's affiliated to Sky and the BBC, and do great work in that sector. Bob Carlos, the guy that runs it, is definitely a force of change.
Okay.
So there are people that are passionate about bringing skills into the industry.
And is this you personally, or is Panavision involved in that as well?
No, Panavision's involved in that.
Okay.
Yeah, it is a Panavision thing. Panavision are members of a couple of organizations which look to enhance and bring people into the industry.
Yeah.
And as a company, we've always had trainees that come through our camera department, and we know that they're going to go out as freelance technicians into the industry, and that could be as 3 or 4 a year, up to last year I think it was 15.
Through here.
Okay. Industry.
Oh wow! And how long are they with you? A year?
They used to be with us for 2 years. It's because the industry's been, as Wayne said, short of skills.
Yes.
Basically, because of the way it's grown. That's kind of dropped to a year.
Okay.
But, at least they've got a grounding and a basic skill. To
hit the ground running then.
Exactly. Many of them leave us to go straight onto productions.
Wow.
They
Really?
get picked up by the crews coming in here.
Is he
They
like
may be
that?
the trainee.
Yeah.
But they still go into the industry, basically.
Straight in, sit on and set.
Wow.
So it's very much an industry like that.
How do you pick those lucky people
out of a hat.
I mean, just out of curiosity. I'm asking for a friend.
Why are you leaving an apple? Why are you leaving an apple on the table?
I mean, they tend to approach us.
Yeah. Please, sir, can I have some more kind of approach?
And the other thing, I guess you and I, Jacob, has discussed this on previous meetings we've had. There are, of course, some cameramen that have had a background in stills and have come through.
Here I
am. But even ones that are of high level, on which they're not quite a household name, but they're pretty close to.
Yeah, okay.
I'll sit back down.
So for instance, John Matheson, who shot Gladiator, for instance. Amongst many other films.
So he started off as a still shooter,
wasn't he? He's definitely got, I'm not sure he started off as stills photographer, but he's certainly got a good eye for stills photography. He's certainly done a lot of still stuff in his time. And he's very good at it. It's a good example. Dean Semler, who has done many big films.
Okay.
He's Australian DOP. He's a really, really good stills photographer as well. So we have seen over the years many people that have moved from stills into our industry. There was a period when, this is back in the 80s, when we had Terence Donovan, we had David Bailey, John Swanell.
Whoa! So what do you mean? So what
kind of characters?
So they came through here. What do you mean?
No. What I'm saying is those photographers who were famous stills photographers. What's less known about them is they actually started to shoot TV commercials. So they were actually shooting with an image.
Yeah.
And not just them. People like Godley and Cream, for instance, from 10cc.
Yeah.
They directed commercials. So this industry's pulled in people from a wide and varied background.
Of course, you've done the opposite. You've spent 20, 30 years in the cinematography industry, but now you shoot stills.
That's true.
So you can go the other way.
That's brilliant. And here we are at Panavision, and we spoke so much about Canon.
I'm not trying to make a living out of it like you.
Yeah. That's a mug's game.
Did you hear that? No, trying to make a living. Did you hear that little dig? The emphasis on the word trying as well.
Yeah, I'm not daft.
Yeah, Jake's got threadbare elbows in his jumper. Life's so bad.
Yeah, that's it. So for Panavision, I mean, because the industry's changing so quick, especially with advancements like we spoke about tech and everything else, and the progression of digital world. I mean, you've seen a lot of changes over the years of being here. So how else is that affecting Panavision? I mean, are you guys having to play catch up now with tech and technology and improving stuff for all your cinematographers and DOPs, or are you just leading them?
I think an honest answer would be that in the past we would try to do everything ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's just not possible any longer. You have to pick, I guess a good way of saying it, you have to pick your battles basically. So I think that we are firmly in the camp of wanting to control and develop our own lenses as much as possible. That's not to say we don't buy third-party lenses. Yeah. We do.
But that is your specialty. But
our speciality is, in lenses.
Yes.
And we're happy to partner with companies like Red in developing cameras.
Being on to my next question. Right. Yes.
So the DXL, it was a partnership with Red.
Yes.
The camera was heavily influenced by what we wanted.
It's like you've read my questions, Jeff.
Wayne's ruining the immersion. It was seamless.
So far that's been, I would think, a great collaboration for both companies.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, the DXL is, our premier camera. It's an 8K camera, to go back to the 8K question again.
And it's the LF?
Sorry?
And your DXL
it's a large
LF?
format camera, yes.
So for our novices, explain the difference between
Okay, so...
I asking for a friend.
Yeah. So I guess for your listeners, I guess the easiest way to answer it, and the way I always try to explain it to people, is that think of traditional motion picture cameras of being similar to APS-C in size and format.
Yes.
In fact, they were actually closer to APS-H than C. So large format for us means moving to full frame stills, basically, which is 36 by 24 millimeter.
Yep.
Or anything larger than that in terms of format size. So that was what we would call large format.
Yes.
So you were shooting on half of a 35mm frame then, is that what you're saying?
Yes, we were.
Whole movie industry.
Half frame.
Whole movie industry.
For many, many years.
Don't forget, 16mm was smaller than that.
Well, I hope our photographic listeners, especially the amateur world and the pro-ams, the keyboard warrior battles, are listening to this relativity of like the movie industry was shot on like a half-sized 35mm format.
Yep.
And projected 56 feet.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it just goes to show, don't worry about the sensor, just go and get the lenses for effect.
That's interesting. Yeah,
so the only stills, more or less stills equivalent in the past to a full frame motion picture camera was the Olympus pen cameras in the past.
Yeah, that's right. They used to shoot
so they
that,
were kind of, so in actual fact, back in the day, we were able sometimes to take Olympus pen F lenses and adapt them for cinematography use because they were very close.
Because the old Olympus pen used to be the half frame.
Used to be half frame.
Exactly. I had one. I wish I still had it. But
really?
Yeah.
So that's the way to think of it.
Yeah.
Basically. So there, it's not true to say, though, that there was not the equivalent of large format, because VistaVision was large format.
Yeah.
And basically equivalent to 36 by 24. Not quite exactly the same as that, but close enough.
Yeah.
Close enough. So there has been large format before in the motion picture industry. And VistaVision was used for widescreen movies and a lot for visual effects in the past when we were living in the film days. So I guess the best way to describe modern film cameras, film industry cameras, they're digital, is large format is anything that's kind of 36 by 24 or larger, because they're not all the same size.
Or as our photographic people will understand it, full frame. They like to have that battle.
You finally made it.
Full frame.
Made it to full frame.
Full frame.
Yeah.
The movie industry's now at full frame.
Exactly.
After all these years of being successful with.
That is crazy though, yeah. I mean, I knew that, but I'd totally forgotten it. Yeah.
Considering like movie industry, people also forget that, a moving image is a series of stills.
It's a series of stills.
Even in a digital world.
Of course, the big difference is they're on the screen for a very short period of time.
Yes.
Each one of those individual frames.
Yeah, that's right.
Because of the frame rates. So they're not and it's a moving image, not a static image.
You're not inspecting it.
Yeah,
exactly.
You're not looking at a single
way.
frame. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So it's different from that. Of course, it still needs to be sharp.
Yeah.
It still has to.
Close enough is good enough.
Well, no. Close enough is good enough. Not quite.
That's Jake's answer to everything, as you know, Jeff, from earlier on.
Yeah, exactly. Some of those lenses is just.
He's trying to get the focus pullers all fired now.
Close enough is good enough. That's why he keeps like stretch nylon and cling film in his kit bag.
I guess that's one thing the audience, of course, have to bear in mind. I would say one of the hardest jobs on set is the focus puller.
Yes.
Because you've got to keep sharp a moving object, i.e. the actor, if they're moving between marks.
Sometimes the guy holding the camera is moving as well.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. So, so sometimes the guy's moving, or it's moving on a crane, or it's being turned on a head or something. And the focus puller's got to keep that image sharp.
Focus puller's got a wireless unit with a separate monitor, and they're standing still while all the action's going on, aren't they? It's all that wireless.
I've seen some of them were doing it on the side. They're not actually looking at how sharp the image is. They're just doing it by judging distance on the side of the camera. It's crazy.
It's an art form.
I mean,
it's
certainly some folks will have different ways of doing it, but it is a skill.
It's a skill set.
There's no question about that. It's a skill.
You definitely won't want to screw that up on a blockbuster film during a explosive moment.
Or somebody's doing a breakdown moment, where you really just get one shot at it.
And to give another skill, actually, when I first came into this industry, and as we said, it was through an engineering company that used to make it what we called a geared head.
Yes.
And the other big manufacturer of geared heads at that time was an American company called Worrell. One of the camera operators who operated the geared heads said to me was that they would get you to put a sheet of paper up on a wall and put a pencil on the front of the tilt platform on the head, and you had to learn how to draw a figure of 8 on the paper to be able to use the geared head properly to draw a figure of 8. Trust me, it's not easy to do. I've tried it.
Easy.
It's very difficult to do.
Did you do it?
Eventually I did, yes.
Can you still do it?
I'd probably not know.
I think we should wheel one in, Jake. Don't you get a bit of paper on the wall, mate? Get a pencil.
That's one hell of a party trick.
One of my jobs when I first went into Joe Dunton Cameras was actually repairing those heads.
And a pencil.
And so, of course, we then play around with them to see if they were all right, check if there was no backlash, etc. And so one of the ways we would do that was actually try and draw the figure of 8 on a piece of paper.
Right. So make sure it's smooth, you mean?
Of course, most people moved away from that to what we call fluid heads.
Yeah.
Because you still have to be skilled to use them, but not really as skilled as using a geared head.
Because it's direct.
Much more difficult to use, I believe. But geared heads are beginning to make a bit of a comeback as well, which is nice to see.
Yeah. And of course, we've moved into the gimbal world as well. I mean, stabilized and vests and rigs and text.
So, these are some of the differences then between the stills world and the motion picture world.
Yes.
And of course, there are some similarities. So every stills camera is able to produce metadata.
Yep.
Which we pull into Lightroom or whatever software suite we're using. But we're using it in terms of basic information. So it could be in stills, just simply telling you the focal length, what exposure you were at.
Invaluable.
Yeah. What shutter speed it was, etc. In a motion picture camera, that metadata could be telling you a lot more than that. So it's big differences, and that's
consistency is one of the things. I mean, as a still shooter, I don't really have to deal with that as much. But what I mean by that is that you guys are going to have to shoot scene to scene to scene to scene, and you have to have it consistent. So I'm just setting up one shot, and then if I come and do another shoot next week, and it's fine because they're not being put side by side, which will literally happen in a show or a film. They're going to be put side by side. So that consistency is just absolutely critical for sure.
So all of the newer cameras are obviously are able to give metadata. Many of the modern lenses, like you see on a stills camera, provide data back to the camera. But the big difference is, of course, we can mix that metadata with the time code as well in motion picture. To give us a much bigger picture, which is then useful information for visual effects, for instance.
True. If they need to match up something depth of field or distance, then they need that sort of information. Like, at what point was this focused? I presume they'll know exactly the distance of focus.
They may need to know what focal length it was.
Yeah,
yeah. If
exactly.
it was a zoom,
distortion.
Where was it, basically?
Yeah. In fact, I was talking to a guy who does a lot of the digital stuff for the Marvel universe and that sort of thing, and he was saying that they do all the CGI and stuff first in a lot of their movies, and then the actors and actresses have to work around that.
Yes.
So it's done. Whereas before it used to be the other way around. The CGI would be built around the actors, but now he says a lot of it is all done months beforehand, and then they go away and film the actors around the CGI. And it does kind of make sense because it takes a lot longer to render out a scene than it does for somebody to go, I'm sorry, no, can you do that run again, but 2 feet this way? It's far easier to change that on the day than it is to change a CGI render. So it is interesting to see the way that's going.
So, one of the things I think we'll see is that information, could, I'm not saying it would, but it could be onward developed because of AI, for instance.
True.
So, there's ways in which you could see, the data becoming more important than maybe it is today.
You could certainly take that data and possibly create scenes in the future that was solely CG and create a similar sort of scene based on that data. That's true. Yeah.
So it's just one direction in which we just have to look at the market and say, what's happening there? How is it changing? Basically, of course, the other thing for us, so you talk about development, is actually one that gets asked all the time in stills as well. And that is dynamic range.
Yes. Is ever growing?
Because, I think realistically, I know there are, situations where you can get more than that, but realistically, natively, without having to revert to HDR, the best camera may give you up to 14 stops of dynamic range.
Depending on the lens, of course.
Of course, exactly. And what stop it's at as well. That makes a difference.
Yeah.
In areas like that, we may see an improvement. Interestingly, a former colleague of mine at Lee Filters was working with an optometrist in Scotland on some research that they were doing. And he said that every couple of years we have to keep revising up the amount of dynamic range that we think the human eye can see. Now,
really,
it's a complicated question to answer because basically the human eye can see, I can't remember the exact amount, but it can see a certain level of dynamic range.
In terms of range of stops is what you're saying.
Range of stops. But of course, our brain can adjust. So think of it this way. You've just walked from a dark theatre out into bright sunlight. We all squint, don't we?
The process is working.
But the brain's now hoping your eyesight to adjust to the different level of exposure. So once we were in the theatre, we might have only been able to see, for argument's sake, 6 or 7 stops.
Oh, I see what you're
then when you
saying.
come out
when we come outside into the outside,
you're using a different.
We might be able to see 14 stops because it's brighter. Because the humans don't see that well in the dark.
Plus, the brain is also telling you to squint, which is changing what the eye can actually see.
But some of that detail that you could see in the theatre when you've gone outside, you can no longer see.
Yeah.
So if you combine the two,
using a different range, true.
Basically, there's some people suggest that certain of us, not all of us, can see up to 20 stops of dynamic range.
Well, I couldn't look up
but not all at once.
yeah. Okay.
That's
now the fact is that
in theory you could build a camera that had.
Now the camera doesn't have a brain to be able to alter its dynamic range,
but it could have essentially 2 chips that would be able to do that, use different ranges.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we've seen some things in terms of dual pixels. For
Canon.
Yeah,
exactly.
So,
it's back to Canon again, Jeff, isn't it?
I'm just
pixel.
I'm just giving that as one example. Dual pixels. So maybe we'll see quad pixels in the future or something.
We're getting quad processors, so why not?
And maybe quad processors will give us different dynamic range between those pixels and then sample between the two.
Because we can certainly get more resolution in smaller spaces. So there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to have
using quad cores
those tiny
those little things.
So who knows what tomorrow will bring? Certainly if you go on lots of the forums, people are sort of saying, some people are saying we've got all the dynamic range we need, and we've got other people saying, I like more dynamic range.
How do you see it?
The trouble is your brain can see it. That's just the thing. Your brain will adjust.
But do you think
your eyesight for that?
It's one of those scenarios, especially the people that may not have the knowledge of this topic or photography or cinematography, and the end user at home. Is that what I'm saying? Is it you don't know what you don't know?
True.
So those people aren't going to see what they don't.
But that's not to say that they won't enjoy it.
But let me give you another scenario then. So if you're
many of your listeners may be landscape photographers. So we've all been in the situation where we want to take a dawn shot.
Yeah.
And we've got to use an ND grad, because if we don't, you're just going to blow your sky completely because the sun's so bright.
Yeah.
Basically. Now, if you can get to a point where I don't need an ND grad to do that,
True.
I can do that in one exposure.
Good example.
Yeah.
Then that's,
Master.
but if we were up to, let's say, for argument's sake, 18 stops, then we may still have to use a filter for the hottest part of the sun.
Yeah.
But for the rest of it, it might not have to be quite as much, which means then you won't see the effect of that grey from the filter as much.
Yeah.
It will mitigate
Nice
that.
way of putting it across.
It is a good example, yeah. It is, yeah.
Shot me down in flames.
That's it.
So there are situations where I can see
MD for a reason.
it would be a benefit. It would be a benefit.
Yeah, of course.
Of course, that doesn't change the fact that we should all strive to get the exposure right in the first place.
Thank you very much. We like that, Rance. So for us then, Jake, photography is in black and white.
Says the Fuji shooter with about 14 stops already with his GFX. I mean, that's the closest thing to cheating that I've ever seen.
Oh, the medium format.
Yeah, that thing is.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
So I think there are areas where there still will be improvement.
Of course.
There are certain things in physics, of course, which we can't change.
Yeah.
So diffraction, for instance, maybe, who knows, maybe there'll be a way in which we can counteract diffraction in the future. Right now, we can't.
Now you've started the ball rolling as a scientist genius. You've just gone off and you
technically it is a fixed
now.
number. So in theory, it should be possible because it doesn't deviate. That refraction index is consistent.
Emails we're going to get on this.
The theory says that the more resolution we get, the quicker diffraction kicks in.
So anyone wants to argue that, the email is Jeff.
I'm not saying I agree with that. What I'm saying is that you'll get people argue one way or the other way.
Yeah, of course.
Basically,
let them fight it out. Eh?
Exactly. Let them fight it out. I don't think necessarily it's as black as white one way or the other as people say.
And not only that, with all the advancements and changes that we may be able to get 20 stops that the eye can see. I mean, the advancement in digital technology is expedited its rate very quickly, hasn't it? In a way, it's grown and changed. So we're at a level now where any changes we've got are incremental refinements, which we'll see
hugely.
A lot less differences. The benefits, obviously, apart from the viewer appreciating some of those changes, the benefits are coming to the operators and the camera operators and the production crew.
Which is all going to look great on Instagram. They'll look great on Instagram. We can all agree.
And in digital, we can see much more into the shadows than we ever could in film.
Yeah.
Basically, that's where there's been a big improvement. But that's not to say there's not improvements that still could be made as well.
True.
And it would be nice, wouldn't it, if we can have a camera where we can shoot at 1600 ISO and we've got no noise in it, in the shadows.
I'm just waiting for that camera to come out where I can just take a shot and it's done all my lighting for me as well, Jeff.
It's called a GFX.
Oh, right. I want that hard lighting and soft lighting combined just when I press the button.
All joking aside, I think that cream always rises to the top. And that people that have dedicated their life to trying to create great images imaginatively won't just stop tomorrow, regardless of what technology we have. Basically, it's creative mind. A camera is a tool.
Yep.
It always has been a tool. The tools have got better and they've got varied, but they're still a tool. And it's how you use a tool that matters.
I've known some tools in my time as well.
What a fantastic roundup at the end there, Jeff. That was perfect closure.
That is brilliant. Well, I mean, on top of that, there's one question I wanted to get in, which we haven't covered, and that is have you got a favourite part of the industry that you're in? I mean, is it like being on?
Question.
I mean, you must get some opportunities where you might be on. Do you get to go on film sets and things?
Not as much as I used to. I do, but not as frequently as in the past, and it's become more difficult for us to do that as well because
sneaking in the back,
get away with it. You mean?
Well, in fairness to the content companies, it's because because everybody's got a cell phone which takes pictures or shoots videos.
Secrets. Yeah, true.
You've got people that unfortunately have gone on sets and they've taken photographs or they've taken video,
right?
And then they've uploaded it to the internet, and then they spoil part of the magic for people that want to see the content, and that's made the companies much more risk adverse, justifiably so. Basically,
yeah, it makes sense.
They're committing a lot of money into these projects. It's their intellectual property at the end of the day.
It spoils it. Yeah, I've had that done to me, which broadcast very quickly on a shoot of mine, didn't it? Which we won't go into. I've had that where somebody iPhone snapped and it went global in 10 minutes.
So unfortunately, it's become much harder to go into a studio. Of course, the other side of that as well, of course, is that it's about risk management as well. It's not just solely about piracy or people posting stuff that they shouldn't. It's also unfortunately, we live in a world that's much more dangerous than it used to be. And studios are high profile places. It only needs one, crazy person basically.
Okay.
Spoil a lot of things.
So.
Yeah.
Right.
So out of what's readily available to you and easy for you, if there's any part you could be on more regular.
Forgot there was a question in there. Sorry.
Yeah. What's one of your favourite places in the industry to be in if you could be in it more, or one you enjoy more? Let's say, be in more. Don't want to risk your job.
Personally, actually, I love talking to the creatives.
Okay.
In terms of what the DPs have to say, what they like, what they dislike. Vision. Yeah, listening to their vision.
Because that's really the front line for you, then.
Yeah, we do workshops. There's an international film festival in Poland every year called Camerimage.
Yeah.
Which we attend, and we get to kind of rub shoulders with our client, our main client being the cinematographer. It's such a small place that you're getting quite a lot of quality time with these people, and listening to their stories, listening to their wishes and wants, and seeing some of the great material that they've created knowing that you've been just a small part in that wheel, to get it there, whether it's individually members of staff or whether it's us as a company is truly gratifying, basically.
Yeah, cool.
And it's an honour to be part of that process. I think a lot of people when they go when they watch a show on the TV or they watch a movie, of course on a movie they see this massive cast of people that took part, but they're all there for a reason. Basically, they all have a job to do, and we are part of that team that has a job to do.
Yeah.
And without that army of people, those productions wouldn't happen. It's not solely about the actors. It's about every member that's got that production to the screen. Basically, and technology plays a big part in that. It helps them become more cost effective, helps improve the quality of the end result, and that's gratifying to know that we've got people that have laboriously tried to design a lens, seen it through the prototype stages, seen it through the manufacturing stages, seen it through the teething issues when it's first released. And then, you get to see it consistently used on production after production after production. That's, a gratifying position to be in.
Yeah, I bet. What a place to be, and a privilege to have access to all of that, mate. We'll keep knocking that door, Jake.
I know, yeah.
My name is on the list.
Follow some of the others that have been down that path before you.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
very true. Very true. So, is there anything exciting that you're working on at the moment or have coming up that you can tell us about without obviously breaking lots of NDAs and things like that? Anything you can share to our audience?
I can share that. I can share this much anyway. As you could imagine, as I'm sure if you had Canon or Fujinon or anybody else here, they'd kind of be as kind of tactful on this question as I'm about to be.
Jeff, come back, mate. Come back.
We never stop innovating.
basically. And no sooner have we finished a series of lenses, we're discussing and working on the next set. And that's still the case as we speak. So, we kind of try to evaluate the market and see, is there any remaining gaps? Is there one of our products that needs improvement? How could we improve it if that's the case? So it's a bit like that hamster on the hamster wheel, basically. We just keep going and keep seeing how we can push the envelope.
Very diplomatic, Jeff.
So
very diplomatic.
That's how we do it.
Yeah. just keep doing what we're going to keep doing. Yeah. Yeah.
Just keep doing it, keep plugging it on, isn't it? Yeah. Well, now I know that you do a tailored, design for service on lenses. I might send a few up for a bit of adjustment, a bit of tailoring. If I knew it was only as easy as sending my jeans in to get altered, I'll send a few lenses up.
And as a plug to both of you, you've both given tips in the past of how people can create simply different looks. I remember once, for instance, somebody telling me that they'd taken the cellophane off of a packet of cigarettes and cut a small hole in the middle of it, and and then put it over the front of their lens, just taped it on with sellotape. And the clear bit was in the middle, and then they just used the cellophane, and it gave a kind of a blurry, soft effect. Just some cellophane off of a packet of cigarettes.
And Jake, if you ever give me that tip again, I can kick you under the table.
But I think it's just about trying to be a little bit more creative.
It is. It's all about innovating, and sometimes it's good to kind of
break.
Well, it's never. I always say to photographers or cinematographers, we should never stop trying to look at something different, something new, something we haven't done before.
Experiment.
Don't be scared about doing it.
Yeah.
Take the risk, basically. Do it. That's how we all learn. That's how we all improve.
And get new things as well that you wouldn't think. Yeah, I mean, in a commercial world, that's something I've not been privileged to have.
But I think we're afraid to make those mistakes. And I mean, like I've always said on my workshops and that sort of thing, the mistakes really are the seeds of creativity.
And I think the last point I'd like to say to everyone is that there is a wealth of knowledge out there, particularly now we have the internet. There's a wealth of knowledge.
Yeah.
But equally, one-on-one or one in a group, advice, help. If you've never been on a workshop, go on at least one workshop and learn from experts, because that information's priceless and you'll never forget what you picked up at that workshop. It will always be there. And those people test you to push yourself.
And I think that's amazing.
I'm not sponsoring Jeff to say that, by the way. I mean, that's totally...
No. So for any photographic workshops from colour, Jake, anything fashion beauty, pop on over to my side. No, but that's so invaluable because people forget that. I mean, people are so rushed to go, I can find out on the internet. But like we've said before, on the internet, where content is being short-timed so much, as in you may get a 3-hour shoot in 10 minutes. You don't get to see the mistakes and learn of how we got there or how we've changed.
So every year at Camera Image, we have 2 workshops, one with maybe a single DP and one with a group of DOPs. And they're all about the audience is predominantly students, and it's all about them imparting some of their knowledge to those students. So, it doesn't matter whether it's, the kind of workshops you guys do or the kind of workshops we do with those cinematographers. The point is exactly the same. You're sharing knowledge and suggesting ideas so those people can improve and grow their own knowledge.
Yeah, and that's amazing. And like you said, I don't think you can beat physically being there for the experience and the environment and the atmosphere and everything that goes with creating.
And get out there and shoot as much as you can. Just get out there and do it.
It's practically free, so yeah.
Yeah. That's also, there's so much more we wanted to go into and ask about other things, but maybe, at a later date we come back for a part 2.
Sure.
And then we might have more things to talk about that may have been released that we're allowed to talk about.
One of the things I think that maybe we could cover on a future one would be some of the accessories and some of the simple accessories and what difference they can make to what you do.
Good.
I think
good idea.
I think that's a good direction. Yeah, most certainly. And more on the.
I can't believe we haven't put him off, Wayne. He wants to do another one. Can you believe that?
One example we can give, for instance, on that, just to wrap up, is like a move and zoom at the same time kind of effect.
Following that, check. Move and zoom.
I can walk and
try that on set.
The cinematography. Yeah.
Yeah.
So pan and zoom. Yeah.
And zoom.
Well, or track forward and zoom at
Yeah.
the same time. Zoom out as you track forward.
So you get a perspective change, don't you? Yeah. So it's sort of a technique that's used a lot of films for that.
But it can also work for stills.
For stills, it means you got to move, mate. It means you got to physically move.
I can fall over.
But you don't need something hugely expensive to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Well, see, it's got intrigue now. So
I know.
For all our listeners,
Got to come back to find out.
Got to tune into the next one when we get Jeff back on to dive deeper into. Is this your engineering side coming back into? I see you smiling a bit. It is, isn't it? I knew it. I could tell, man. As soon as I started that line, I could see the smirk coming in his
Sowing
face.
the seeds.
Sowing the seeds. Okay, is there any patents registered? I think that's
brilliant. That's excellent.
That's awesome so far. There's a couple of little bits in there we could dive into next time and the next one as well, which we can expand on because we can't fit it all into the time span that we've got for this episode. But what we've got is just absolutely amazing and awesome. Now, before we do our roundup, we have one question which we ask all our guests, and that is this is where we ask you to personally recommend two people, either from the photographic or video world, because I know you're heavily into photography as well, and they can be from any realm of the photography video world, any area, any sector, whatever, to come on as guests to put
come on as a guest.
Now,
that's a tough question.
But we ask you to actually introduce them to us.
Right. Well, one of my suggestions would be somebody you already know.
Okay.
Because they have a wealth of knowledge in this industry, and that's Michelle Channer.
Yes. Okay.
And the other person.
The silence was Wayne writing it down.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. I was waiting for Jake to whistle or something, but nothing happened.
And,
on his slate.
And then the other person, I would say, because he's got some. Would he do it though? That's the thing.
That's the thing, isn't it? Does he owe you any favours?
Yeah.
Does he owe you any favours?
Maybe I'll change that thought.
Okay. Well, you don't have to give it to us over the mic now, but I mean, even if
let
we
me come back. Because there's a couple, and I need to think what would be best for your audience.
Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, for our audience, obviously, they seem to be obsessed on the creative side of things. So I think that would be a good. I don't know if that helps you at all.
Yeah. Okay.
That would be awesome. And, if you can mention us and shoot them our details, then they can get in touch with us rather than we hound them and they call security on us.
But that would be. Let me check with him first, but there is a cinematographer, that's basically retired now, but he teaches at one of the, universities in town, who has probably shot more TV commercials than anybody I know. And his was a master of macro photography.
Wow. Okay. So a lot of detail in. Get it? A lot of detail in that. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Because he did a lot of tabletop stuff with food and things like that.
Okay. That's
I mean,
definitely.
I'd be interested to get an educator on at some point. So yeah.
Well, he was a prolific cinematographer and a great guy as well.
Okay.
That would be awesome. If that can happen.
No pressure.
We've got no name at the moment. No pressure. We won't keep emailing you with reminders much.
No, I'll speak to him first because he is a bit selective.
Okay.
That's the reason why. But I think I think I can twist his arm. He owes me a couple of favours. So
that means we now owe Jeff as well.
And so the cycle begins again. Yeah.
So, for our listeners, before we sort of round off with a round-off statement, where can our audience find you or Panavision? I mean, you can use either or both, you and your own personal work photographically, if you want to display that. Or where can our audience find Panavision, i.e. online?
It's www.panavision.com, basically.
That's simple. That's simple, folks. And I know also Panavision Official is on YouTube.
Yep.
And at Panavision Official on Instagram. And also vimeo.com/pvision as well, is what I found.
Correct.
Bradley,
and we do have a strong in-house marketing team, so the information is refreshed regularly.
Okay,
seen that. I've seen some of the latest stuff go up, and it is really current.
Cool.
Yeah,
okay. So we have a good team like that.
Brilliant. Any other questions,
so
Jake?
No, not for me. That's brilliant. Yeah, thank you so much, Jeff. I appreciate that. Yeah. I mean, I know we've kept a lot. Maybe this will be 2 episodes again.
It's a 2 hours, 2 episodes.
Yeah. So really appreciate your time on that. It's super generous of you.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
I know we lied to you and said it's going to be 30 minutes, but.
Okay, so to stay up to date and to be the first to know about new episodes on all things creative from the photography and video world, make sure you subscribe to the podcast at podlemania.podbean.com/subscribe. And if you like this episode, don't forget to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Podbean. And please give us a like and don't forget to comment. And remember, nice comments only, please. And the comments help boost our rankings in the podcast world. And once again, a big thanks for joining us and a massive thank you to our guest, Jeff Allen at Panavision. And we must thank you for inviting us into your boardroom here and treating us so well. So thank you for your
time. Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, I appreciate
that.
How
precious it is. And after that, folks, we will see you in the next episode.
See you next time, guys.
Take care for now. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.